Okay, good afternoon everybody. Welcome, thank you for coming down and enjoying this lovely weather we're having, and coming to have a discussion about travel. I'd like to introduce you to the panel. We have Vicky, who some of you may well know, who's the Business and Travel Lecturer here at Albans. We've got Anna on the far side, who's Flight Free UK, and in the middle is Judy, who's the travel lady. So they will have a chat to you. Once they've had their chat, save your questions for after, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Okay? So, Anna, would you like to start, please?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi everyone. So my name's Anna. I'm the director of a charity called Flight Free UK. We encourage people to travel without flying, and there are a few ways we do this, but first of all we give climate information about the climate impact of flights. A lot of people don't know how carbon heavy flights are, and we also give the information for the alternatives, because obviously if we're going to be travelling without flying, we need to find out what those low carbon methods are. So train travel, coaches, ferries, etc. I have a stall here, as Judy does as well, in the room, just a couple down. So if you have any questions or any, if you want to take away any postcards or any facts, those kinds of things, then you can do that afterwards and later. So just to give a little bit of background to the charity and why we do what we do. We find that people are generally really environmentally aware when it comes to lots of other aspects of our lives. Things like food and energy and daily transport, so driving or choosing to go by bike, that kind of thing. But people are generally less aware of the impact of flights and holiday travel. If you look down at the broad statistics, you can see that the emissions that you're producing from a year's worth of a particular activity, so for example, eating meat for a year or driving for a year, just taking one flight could produce more emissions than those activities do over the course of a year. So it's very important that we look at our travel habits if we are serious about reducing emissions. I guess you're all here today because you are serious about reducing emissions, or at least know that it's really important that we do. So yeah, that's kind of fundamentally why we were set up, to increase the public knowledge of that and encourage those alternative choices. And a lot of what we talk about is what those alternatives are, because not flying doesn't mean not travelling. And on the stall as well, there's a little map of people come along and they say where they have been to without flying, and it's so inspiring to see some of the travels that people have done that don't involve aeroplanes, and a lot of it is a lot easier than you might think. So there's loads and loads of options, and you're really, really doing a great thing and reducing your emissions by avoiding the flight. And final thing just to mention is that we all can make these choices, especially because you might not know this, but the majority of the flights we take are actually just for holidays. So we might think, oh, it's business travel that makes up the highest percentage of flights. You know, it's people going to meetings all the time. That's why people are flying. But actually, overall, 2/3 of flights are purely for holidays. That doesn't even count visiting family and friends. So the Office for National Statistics, who gets all this information together, they separate that question out. They ask why people are travelling. Is it for business? Is it for family and friends? Or is it for leisure? So that leisure section really does mean just a holiday. So if 2/3 of our flights are for holidays, that's things that we have complete control over where we go. So we can choose to go somewhere closer to home, or we can choose to go by other means. And if we can switch how we travel for that big chunk of our travel, then we're really making a difference in terms of emissions, overall emissions. So yeah, it's all about that inspiration, education, and the other thing we do, this is kind of fundamental to our work, should have mentioned it. Because we're a behaviour change organisation, And we run a similar method or model of behaviour change to campaigns like Veganuary, which you've probably all heard of. That's giving up meat, dairy products for a month, with the hope that that would then feed into longer term behaviour change. It doesn't mean you have to go vegan, it just means that you give it a try for a set time, it's a challenge, and then over the course of the year, you might reduce your meat intake overall. And so we run the Flight Free Challenge, which is for a year. So it's different from Veganuary because it's over the course of a year, but mostly because if you're looking at diet, you're eating 3 times a day, but we're not travelling 3 times a day in the same way. So over the course of a year, it's if you are used to flying, it's hard, but it's perfectly achievable and can be brilliant, can be an adventure, and can be kind of a really good way to find out what those alternatives are. So yeah, that's what we do. That's how we inspire people to change or to break a habit or to change things up. So if you are inspired as well, you can sign up to the Flight Free Challenge on our website. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much. Hi everybody, thanks ever so much for coming. My name's Judy. I own and run a local travel agency called The Travel Lady. I completely agree with everything that you've just said, but as my business is travel, I know that there are people who are still travelling, who are still getting flights. So the way my company is looking at it is to provide people with an option, many options actually, so that if they choose to fly to go on holiday, that we can reduce the impact as much as possible and also offset. There's quite a lot of discussion about whether offsetting really works, but for every customer that I have, every customer that travels with me, I donate a set amount to Mossy Earth, who do rewilding, who do reforesting, who replant the coral reefs. It's a really interesting company to have a look at if you're interested in sustainable travel. I work a lot with older people who actually don't want to fly, who actually would prefer to take the train and maybe have a river cruise. So there's always the option, but when you don't have the option and you do need to fly, I do have lots of tips for you. So please do come and chat to me at my stand and see the small differences that you can make that will make a big difference to the world overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Vicky. I work here at Albans College. So my job is business. I teach GCSE and A-level equivalents of business and travel as well. So again, GCSE travel and the equivalent of the A-level travel. I've been here almost 3 years now and previously worked at another college for 7 years doing the same job. My job here, so I've hopefully had an impact on the curriculum since I've been here at Oaklands with regards to both business and travel. Obviously we spend the summer planning, and for us it's been a massive shift in making sure the students have exposure to sustainability, responsible travel units. Last year we ran a big exhibition up in one of our building over there, the big building called EC. We ran a whole afternoon about sustainability in business. So we got the students on a project working on how we can make sure the college is more sustainable, and luckily the leadership team looked at that and they actually took some of those ideas and have actually rolled them out. So that was really, really lovely. I'm a big believer as a teacher in student voice, and I think it's really important that we give the students opportunity to have exposure both in travel and tourism, curriculum as well as business, making sure that they're really aware of the changes they can make, and especially going forwards in the different job roles that they're looking to go into. So that's my sort of involvement at the moment here at the college.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Do anybody have any questions from the floor? Yes.
Yes, I did the lady at the end there. I just wonder how your group feels about the increase in Luton Airport and Heathrow Airport, because obviously there's more and more people travelling.
Yeah. So you're probably all very, very impacted by Luton Airport, and will be by the expansion. We just ran a parliamentary petition asking the government not to expand airports across the UK. And just to clarify, that doesn't mean we want to close the airports, we just don't want the airports to expand. So there is already enough capacity for the current demand. More capacity is all it does is drives new demand. The argument is that we need to expand because we need to accommodate everybody who wants to fly, but actually it's the other way around. It's like with road building. You widen the road to accommodate the cars, and all that happens is more cars come along. It's the same. So the difficulty is the narrative from the government, and especially frustratingly, Rachel Reeves herself once opposed airport expansion. She historically has opposed Heathrow, third runway. But she has been convinced that it's okay now because the airline industry is talking about sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. Now, it sounds great, and the airline industry will say this will reduce emissions by up to 80%. So, we don't need to worry about the emissions from flights. We can carry on flying, and then we can expand airports and keep on growing. But when you look into it, it's actually the genuine sustainability of SAF is very questionable. There are certain pathways to getting SAF, one of which is biofuel. In its purest form, biofuel is a driver of deforestation, and monoculture plantations which produce biofuel are reducing biodiversity and leading to all sorts of difficulties environmentally. So even though, yes, the plants do absorb CO2 as they grow, so that's how that calculation works, on balance it's worse because the impact of creating and growing biofuel is not positive. And other sources of biofuel are waste oil, so for example, used chip fat. That often hits the headlines, it's quite a good one. The scaling up is very, very hard. So a recent article said it would take 350,000 portions of chips to fuel one flight to New York. So, I mean, we don't have that much. And, I mean, we could eat more chips, but, that's not exactly a solution, is it? So it's a bit kind of smoke and mirrors. So the aviation industry says, don't worry, guys, we've got this sustainable fuel. Carry on flying, don't worry about it. In reality, current use of SAF is 0.6%. And it's not going to get bigger anytime soon. The aviation industry has been setting itself targets for 20 years. We're going to be at 40% SAF by 2025. Oh, well, we didn't meet that one, so let's quietly put that one away. We're going to reach 10% SAF by 2030. Well, it's less than 1% still. It's not going to happen. But even if it did happen, it's still not sustainable. And you might be interested to know if you're vegan, I am, pig fat is used in planes. Your flight is not vegan. So there's so many different ethical considerations and sustainability considerations, but kind of circling back to your question, which is about airport expansion. So the kind of promise of being able to expand sustainably isn't accurate. Even though, so other arguments are, well, planes are quieter now than they used to be, and of course aircraft noise is a big consideration when it comes to airport expansion. And yes, that is true. Aircraft are quieter than they used to be. They're more fuel efficient than they used to be. This is all great, good news. The trouble is that demand outstrips that, or the increase in demand outstrips those savings. So as just one example, a new jet that has been in development for a while is the 777X, Boeing 777X. That's been in production for 15 years. It will reduce fuel burn by 15%, brilliant. But in the time that it's taken to come to market, and by the way, it's not even being used yet, demand has risen by 60%. And that's kind of the story. Like, any efficiency gains, any sustainability gains are always outstripped by the increase in demand. So yeah, I mean, the Climate Change Committee says no airport expansion. The government isn't listening. It's very, very difficult. And from our point of view as a charity, encouraging behaviour change, we say, if we stop flying, the case for expansion falls apart, right? So we can do something, reduce the amount we fly.
Okay, any further questions? Yes.
It seems to me that the big dilemma is or one of the big dilemmas is the differential cost between train travel and flights. I went to Nice last February, and my friend and I, we Googled flights from Luton Airport, £29. In the end, we travelled by Eurostar and SNCF, but that was because we could. Lots of people wouldn't have been able to do that because they couldn't afford it. So I don't know what the answer is for that.
Do you want to say anything about this, Judy?
I think that's probably your one.
Well, I'll just answer the question.
Okay.
Go on, you can say something about this. I will also say something about it.
It is a problem. I deal with people with all budgets, and I can truly say that a lot of people will not bypass a £29 flight for a £300 plane ticket. So I think that's something that you're lobbying for is amazing. But we definitely do need to look at pricing, because I know a lot of my customers would not make that choice.
Can I say something else? Okay, so the main reason why airlines can offer such rock bottom prices is there's no tax on aviation fuel, which lots of people don't know that, and I mean, why would you, unless you are interested in tax? And that's something that absolutely has to change. So there's a budget coming up. Rachel Reeves, again, going to be talking about her a lot. She's scrabbling around for money. Remember last year when the winter fuel allowance was reduced? But if we taxed aviation fuel, we'd have £7 billion in the national purse, right? It makes absolutely no sense not to tax it. If you fill up your car at the pump, you're paying 50%. 50% of what you pay is tax. Why aren't we taxing aviation fuel? Well, I'll tell you, it's because we have got to the point where the airlines are such a powerful lobby. If you taxed the fuel, you would that's political suicide. It's not something that we as a society would accept, because we're so used to having such cheap flights. And it's kind of bonkers how cheap flights are. £29 to Nice, are you joking? Like, how on earth are we getting all the way to the south of France for 29 quid? It shouldn't be allowed, and it's because there's no tax, and the regulation is not right. If we're serious about low carbon travel, if we're serious about the climate, which the government kind of says we are, these are things that we need to address. And it's complicated, but we could tax the fuel. Something else I would caution though is, or would put forward, the flight's £29, but the journey's not going to cost £29. It's going to cost a lot more than that, because you have to get to the airport and you have to pay for whatever extras the airline charges. Sometimes even your seat, and even down to the fact that you can't take your own food with you. If you have to buy expensive airport food if you want to have something on the flight. So these are all things that raise the cost of your journey that don't happen if you're travelling by train. So you're going from the city centre, Luton to London, and I mean it's the same station. You're going into St Pancras from Luton, and then or St Albans where we are here. Go into St Pancras, you just walk up the stairs, and then you're by Eurostar. Like, you're literally there. So those the price of that travel, the whole thing is included. I would. There are ways to get cheap Eurostars. Prices start at £39 for a Eurostar. So if you're lucky, and if you plan in advance, and if you're flexible with when you can travel, you can get a £39 ticket. Even though, often it's much more expensive than that.
I did book 5 months ahead.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But then when you get to the country, like France, then you pay 300 or so euros, as we did, to go from Paris to Barcelona. And then if you're going from Barcelona to Granada, then you're paying another 200 euros. So
I'll give you
considerably to the cost.
Yes, I'll give you a tip there. So if you're travelling on a multi-stage journey like that, then I would advise Interrail. So I don't know if you share this with your customers, Judy. So we just went to Malaga and it cost £365 all in, which is still more than flying, but that's definitely not as much as you would pay if you paid for your seats, you pay for your train separately. I mean, you can pay that just on the Eurostar, right? So yeah, we bought an Interrail pass in the sale. It was a 5-day Interrail pass, and it cost £204 each in the sale. And actually, if we'd got a 4-day pass, which you can get all the way to Malaga or Granada or Cordoba or wherever in 2 days from here, then it's only a 4-day pass. That's about £180. You have to buy your seat reservations on top of that. So yeah, in total we spent £365, but we'd gone to Lake Como the previous year, which was only £260, which is great. And actually, I mean, yeah, flying's cheaper than that, but it's not that much cheaper once you know, a £260 for a holiday, yes please, on a lovely train and, you know, enjoying the journey. So yeah, I would always advise Interrail. It's look at the sale. It's not just for students, and they do a cheaper price for 60 and plus, I guess, and a cheaper price for 25 and minus. So and children under 12 are free. So it's a really great way to travel and not to pay such extortionate prices. So definitely recommend that. Is that your experience as well?
I would say also, if you're taking multiple trains, if you have a chat with your travel agent, they will be able to put it together for you much cheaper than if you bought individual train journeys. It's definitely worth having a discussion with a travel agent about multiple train journeys, just to save you some time and money.
Yes, sir.
If aviation fuel was taxed at the same rate as other train fuel, would the pricing be a lot more competitive, or would the trains be cheaper?
I guess the answer is don't know, because the way the industry works is it isn't regulated. So you would hope that it would be more competitive. I mean, yes, if aviation fuel were taxed, quite a lot of airlines would go out of business, because lots of airlines just operate on no margin whatsoever. So, but you know, we have lots of budget airlines, so and they have been allowed to kind of come about because of the tax situation. So if the tax situation was different, the reality would be different. But yeah, I don't know, and I don't think there have been any projections about that. Most of the studies show, or the projections show, how much you could raise in revenue from taxing aviation fuel at the same rate as road fuel, for example. But yeah, that doesn't then show like how that would then compare to rail pricing. But it would help to level the playing field. And wouldn't that be wonderful if that money were then invested in the low carbon option? Because fundamentally, if the travel reflects the environmental cost in the price of the ticket, then that is going to really facilitate people taking low carbon travel much, much more.
Okay, I have a question. What would you say is the most economical and ecological way of travelling? Because I was thinking before this weekend, maybe cruises. I've been corrected on that, I think. So what are your views on that?
Train travel is by far the most eco-conscious way to travel at the moment. I do have to say that with cruise lines, it's a piece of string. You've got cruise lines that pull out every single stop. They make sure that they give you reusable bottles when you get on board. Nothing is served in plastic. They plug in whenever they get to a port. They run on batteries. They have electric bikes for you to ride. And equally, you've got some of the much bigger cruise lines that are really not playing the game. So if you are conscious and you do love to cruise, firstly I would consider river cruise, because it's smaller, the vessels are more eco-friendly. And if you wanted to go on an ocean cruise but you didn't know who to travel with, again, speak to your travel agent, because an example off the top of my head would be sort of Hurtigruten, which are exploration cruises. They do a lot for sustainability, and also the new cruise brand Virgin. They really try, and one of the ways that they've cut food waste the most is they refuse to have buffets on board. Where the buffet typically is on a cruise ship, on a Virgin voyage, you have individual food stalls. So it's like a food market, and you go up and you ask for your burger or your katsu or your salad, and they prepare it for you right there and then. So there's no food waste, and I think that is really helpful when it comes to cruising.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, ladies. Oh, sorry, one more question.
Is there time to ask another one?
Yes, go ahead.
And I agree. I think there's a very compelling argument for taxing aviation fuel, but we also know that frequent flyers are sort of contributing to the problem. Do you think there's any appetite for taxing frequent flyers that, you know, from your sort of contacts and, you know, this current government?
Yeah, so there have been quite a lot of surveys with the public and some of the climate assemblies that happened after COP26 in Glasgow. So there were lots of kind of studies, I guess is the word, asking the public if they would support such a thing, like a frequent flyer levy, so a tax on frequent flyers. And the way that would work is it wouldn't depend on where you're flying to, so it wouldn't necessarily be related to the actual emissions of your flight, but it would just be to the number. That's the easiest way to do it, and that's kind of fair enough. So if you, by the way, so you might have heard the statistic, 15% of people take 70% of the flights. So that's the reality that we're looking at here in the UK. To be among that 15%, you only need to take 3 flights a year. So if you're taking 3 return flights per year, you are technically a frequent flyer, which if you only take 3 flights, you're probably not going to think of yourself as a frequent flyer, but you are. You can definitely change, make a difference if you reduce that number. Obviously there's the ultra frequent flyers who are at the other end of that spectrum, but yes, back to your question, the appetite amongst the public is very much in favour of taxing that. So the more you fly, the more you pay, and then beyond your 3rd flight you can't afford it, so you're not going to. There are people who will still be able to afford it, who will still fly. So that's part of the question. How can we make this so it's fair? That seems to be the fairest way fundamentally. But let's also remember that the people who fly the most at the moment are the wealthy ones. It's already the people who can afford it who can fly. So about 50% of the people in the UK don't fly at all in any given year, because partly maybe some don't want to, some are nervous, some can't, but lots of them is because they can't afford it. So we are already, it's already a hugely privileged thing to be able to do just to get on a flight in the first place. Government, wow, is government responding to this? No. So yeah, there's loads of politicians who do support this across the parties. It's Green Party policy, it's Lib Dem Party policy. So we would hope if either of those parties got elected, they wouldn't renege on that promise. That's actually part of the policy. It's not Labour Party policy, but there are plenty of Labour politicians who support that measure. So yeah, it's a case of putting pressure on your MP and hoping that not hoping, voting, and also voting with your wallet. We have so much power as consumers to change things and influence things.
Okay, if I could just cut that short there. Thanks very much, ladies. I'm sure the ladies will be available for questions. We have a workshop starting next door for misinformation, which I've been joking about has been at 5:25 all day, but it's actually now. So if you would like to go and see Paul next door, and thank you for coming here. Thank you, ladies, for your information. And see you later. And there'll be another conversation.